Welcome into the WalterPicks Fantasy Show, and today we've got a special one. It's all about the Steelers. And we're going to start off looking at this almost entirely new team. As I fill out the stat sheet, look at this roster. It's almost entirely new. And we'll start at the very top with the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Last season, he was 15.1 points per game, quarterback 24. Not really relevant for fantasy. He did have 4 games over 20-plus points on this Jets team. But I don't think there's a lot here with his. He's not the Aaron Rodgers of old. He does not have the Devonta Adams. He does not have the Donald Driver, all those great players he had in Green Bay in his youth for fantasy football. I do think it's an upgrade. We will talk about how that's going to impact the rest of the players on this team. But we'll just keep it simple with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. What do you think, Sam? Do you think there's any in 1 QB leagues, any kind of even 2 QB leagues, is he a starter for any of your teams?
Yeah, for fantasy football, most likely not. In 2 QB leagues, I think that he could be a sneaky value there. I actually was just last night in a 17-person best ball draft, an expert 17-person draft, a little bit of prep for the 32 league. I have an even bigger respect for the 32 league after going through a 17-person 20-round draft. But Rodgers, I think, was a bit of a value there, where not every team could get 2 QBs. Like in super flex leagues, I don't hate where he's going to end up going, which is really, really late, as a very clear starting quarterback. Like, he's getting drafted right now around other quarterbacks that aren't even guaranteed to start week 1, or that you might not have a ton of confidence of starting week 5. You know, guys like Russell Wilson, the Colts quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. There's some uncertainty there about who's going to be starting from week 1 through week 17. No uncertainty here with the Steelers. So there's some safety there. I do think from a NFL quarterback perspective, he's a bit underrated right now. Coming off the Achilles injury, started really slow, had some moments down the stretch. I think he's a bit underrated, what he's capable of doing. I do think that this team is going to be a pretty low volume offense. Aaron Rodgers teams have had some of the slowest pace in the NFL over the last several years. He almost always takes the clock down to 3, 2, 1 seconds before he snaps, which is part of the reason that almost all of his teams rank really low in pace. We have this team for only 58 plays per game this season, which is near the bottom in the league, and they're probably going to skew run heavy too. So yeah, single QB leagues, he should not be drafted at all. 2 QB leagues, he might actually be a little bit of a value with where he's going, a clear starting quarterback. But you look at the receiving depth in this team, and you get a little bit less excited there. So yeah, I'm out, from a fantasy perspective, but I do think he's a bit underrated. And I do think the Steelers will compete this season for a playoff spot with Aaron Rodgers, who's the best quarterback they've had in, I think, quite some time. And this team just really struggled to put a plan in place after Big Ben. This might be the best QB situation, sneakily, that they've had since then. So yeah, a little bit ahead of consensus in terms of how he's perceived right now in the NFL terms. But yeah, fantasy 2 QB league value, single QB league definitely shouldn't get drafted.
I am in complete disagreement. I do not want to get anywhere near Aaron Rodgers this season, and I'll tell you why. Him as a fantasy perspective, number one, he does not run the ball. That's okay. He never has. He's been viable without that before. But you look at his statistics from last season with a Jets roster, arguably better than the one that he has with the Steelers. He has Garrett Wilson. He had Breece Hall. He had his man, Alan Lazard. His pass completion percentage was 63%. That's good for the quarterback 33. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. His yards per pass attempts was dead last, QB 32. His passer rating on average was QB 23. I don't see anything getting much better with the Steelers on top of an offense that probably isn't going to pass as much. You shouldn't have to be forced to start him in any type of league that's not a 2 QB league.
And I do think is an upgrade for the rest of this team compared to what we had last year. And I want to get to maybe the most exciting. I don't know. There are so many exciting new options on this offense, but I do want to talk about Caleb Johnson, rookie, 3rd-round pick out of Iowa. He does not fumble the football. He was electric. I think 5.7 yards per carry last year, over 1,500 yards, tons of touchdowns. This guy is 6'1", 224 pounds, big back. I mean, compared to Najee Harris, I personally see this as a major upgrade. I mean, Najee Harris, if you had to suffer with me and watch maybe you were watching Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow and you watched the Steelers game, you saw Najee Harris struggling. And I think this replacement, even though he's not the fastest guy, he's 4.5 40 speed. He's got great receiving upside. Caleb Johnson, I think, is a major upgrade. And really, honestly, his ADP right now is 71 on Underdog. It's 80 on Sleeper. We've got him on WalterPicks at pick 73. And right now, I think he's looking like a major steal. But I'd love to hear what you think, Avery. Are you drafting Caleb Johnson? Do you think he's an upgrade? And where are you going with him this year?
Yeah, so I actually really do like Caleb Johnson. I think the Aaron Rodgers thing is kind of just a take in its own that stays up here. Caleb Johnson, to me, in some drafts, ADPs, Jalen Warren is going above Caleb Johnson, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. Caleb Johnson is a bigger running back. I think he's pretty much guaranteed to get the red zone role. And you look at where he's being drafted at, again, outside the top 25 running backs, he's going around Tony Pollard, around Darnell Mooney, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Reed. I'm taking the shot on Caleb Johnson here. I think at some point, yes, this backfield is most likely going to be split for the season, but Caleb Johnson will get the beneficiary role of an RB1, you could call it here.
You guys know I'm not going to disagree with you with my serious case of rookie fever that I have. Caleb Johnson's definitely a piece of that for me. And there's something definitely that you gain from looking at all these prospects before the draft, thinking through what's the best landing spot, what type of situation do we want to see them in before the draft, so that you're not overreacting or underreacting after the draft and just sort of saying whatever the masses are saying. And before the draft, it was very clear with the offense that Caleb Johnson ran at Iowa, a lot of outside zone running where he had a lot of the most success. Not that many NFL teams have an outside rushing scheme. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one of them, and one of the most notable outside zone schemes with Arthur Smith. This was one of the ideal landing spots just from a scheme standpoint. I definitely agree with Seth. He's better than Najee. Just to boil it down very simply, he's a better running back than Najee Harris, a lot more capable of the explosive plays, 73rd percentile size adjusted speed, but he's also a capable receiver, 81st percentile receiving production in college. So yeah, I'm very in on Caleb Johnson. Our top comp for him in the rookie prospect modeling we did was James Conner, which is pretty compelling. He also had some years of success with the Steelers. I saw, there's some Le'Veon Bell comps out there. I don't think I'd go that crazy. It just because he has some patience doesn't mean he's Le'Veon Bell. But there might be that type of ceiling because of his ability as a receiver. And yeah, I really like the scheme fit. I think he's going to be like fantasy viable week one, and his role could only grow as the season goes. And we also, the cherry on top, know that Aaron Rodgers checks it down a ton. And then you look at the receivers on this team, man, and like the running backs are going to have a really high target share on this team. Right now, we have Caleb Johnson at 8% target share, Warren at 12%. They also signed Kenneth Gainwell this offseason, who I think is going to compete more directly with Jalen Warren. But yeah, really, really in on Caleb Johnson, his cost. He's going running back 29 on Sleeper, 5 spots higher on Underdog. I'm definitely buying him at this cost. And if I go zero running back or hero running back, he's definitely one of the guys I'm targeting in the mid rounds.
Yeah, I think he's a great pick. And I'll also mention, if you play in a keeper league, I think this is an amazing choice. I could see him being a 3rd round pick next year, something in that range. I know the Steelers will probably have a new quarterback as well. That's just how we do things in Pittsburgh these times. But I do think, I just want to mention that I think he's an interesting keeper pick as well. And then we'll jump to the second running back, Jalen Warren, who, when I looked at his points per game last season, I took a double take because it's actually a little bit lower than I expected. It was 8.7 points per game, RB 41, and that's PPR scoring. I double checked it. On Underdog, he's going at pick 97, RB 32, Sleeper pick 89, RB 32, and WalterPicks, we got him a little bit higher thanks to the receiving work we talked about, RB 28 at pick 79. The thing that I'm going to mention here, and I'm out on him, I'm not drafting Jalen Warren because last year was his opportunity. Najee Harris, we just talked about how great Caleb Johnson can be. He's a better version of Najee Harris. And Jalen Warren last year, still only 8.7 points per game. I know the offense should be a little bit better with Aaron Rodgers, but the highest snap percentage on Jalen Warren last season, 40%. 40% with Najee Harris as the other running back. Everyone could clearly see. I mean, it was obvious. I'm sure it was obvious to the Steelers team as well. Jalen Warren was a more explosive player. He wasn't able to capitalize last year. That was his opportunity. Kenneth Gainwell is now on this offense as well. So for me, I'm not in on Jalen Warren. I'd actually be probably a little bit just further back towards the Underdog ADP of 97, like almost a high upside handcuff type player. But what do you think, Sam? Are you drafting Jalen Warren? Do you think he's a value, at least at his current ADP?
No, I lean towards agreeing with you here, Seth. And The thing that is interesting with this team is that, they were just so bad offensively at scoring points last year. If you guys remember the game, I'm sure Seth, you recall, but Chris Boswell winning them a game, just with field goals. Like this is what we were dealing with. Twice he did
I
that.
think twice. Week 1
And
against Atlanta, and then I believe there was another one where they won with just field goals.
this team was not capable of scoring touchdowns last season. Jalen Warren had a 0.9% touchdown rate, running back 80. I mean, it's really hard to be under 1% touchdown rate, but we're projecting it to be up at 2.4%, which is actually one of the lowest projections we have across the league. Still really low, but obviously a lot more than twice as good as last season, which is part of the reason that we're projecting him for 11.5 points per game rather than the 8.7 he had last year. But he's not the best goal line back on this team. That's Caleb Johnson. And Kenneth Gainwell might actually be better in that area of the field too. Like, he doesn't really profile as an elite touchdown scorer. It's not like this was such an anomaly last year outside of the team stuff. And if Caleb Johnson goes down, like how big does the role really get for Warren? Like, he's just not really this guy, similar to what we were saying with Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill. I wouldn't go quite to that level with him, but it's a similar archetype of player where he's not going to be this workhorse league winning back, even with injuries. So yeah, I agree with Seth. I just don't think the league winning upside's here. I think in best ball, it's not the worst thing to click on guys that we know catch passes. But yeah, I think I'm with Seth on fading Jalen Warren, and definitely prefer Caleb Johnson. It's a little crazy they're going so close in drafts.
What do you think, Avery? Any draft where you're taking Jalen Warren?
I completely agree with everything that you guys said. I'm not drafting an RB2 that if the RB1 gets injured, there's really no RB1 upside. You're not going to be drafting him to start. He's always going to be on your bench. And you look at who's being drafted next to you: Stephon Diggs, Debo, Joe Burrow for WalterPicks rankings, Darnell Mooney. I'm taking all of those wide receivers over an RB2 that's not going to be on my starting lineup.
It no longer has George Pickens, but it does have DK Metcalf. Last season, again, I double checked this one as well, making sure it's full PPR, but only 12.6 points per game last year for DK Metcalf. Wide receiver 34. This year on Underdog, I mean, he is an underdog type player with the upside that he can bring. Pick 44, wide receiver 23. Sleeper, pick 49, wide receiver 22. WalterPicks, pick 56, wide receiver 29. So still around that wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3 range. I did note one very interesting again last year. When you think about the Seahawks, you'd think, okay, who's the top target for this team? They have Lockett, they have DK last season. We're talking, and they have JSN. DK Metcalf, 11 out of his 15 games played, he had 4 or less targets, which was mind blowing. He just doesn't command, I believe that's targets. That could have been receptions, but I believe that's targets. And DK Metcalf just not getting the volume at the very least that he needs to be productive. And I'm really in line with WalterPicks on this one. At 56, wide receiver 29, which means essentially I'm not drafting DK Metcalf in any league. I don't see it happening as a Steelers fan. I'm not a big DK Metcalf. I like DK Metcalf as a player, but I just don't see me drafting him for any of my teams. What do you think, Avery?
I think, again, a lot of these opinions for me comes down to draft price and what you want your roster to end up looking like. If you're drafting DK Metcalf, there's barely, if not any, target competition, but you're going to have to be taking him around the DJ Moore, around the Jalen Waddle rank. It seems a little bit high for me considering the pass volume of this offense and considering Aaron Rodgers isn't the best quarterback. He is really the only guy to get targets here, so I could see him having a higher target share with the Steelers than he did before. But it's not a guy that I'm reaching to draft. I wouldn't say I'm avoiding him, though.
Yeah, this is a tricky one for me because it's hard not to project a pretty significant target share here when you look at the depth chart. I mean, it's just so obvious who's going to lead this team in targets by a long shot. DK Metcalf's coming off his worst points per game since his rookie season last year. Also was one of his lowest target shares last year. It was at 21% target share last season. We're projecting him at 26% right now in the WalterPicks projections. Easily could end up being higher than that. But yeah, the more I think about the situation, the more I'm out in season-long drafts. I'll take some stabs in best ball for the spike weeks potential, but this is a team that's going to be run first. This is a offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith. Has always been frustrating for fantasy managers and not getting the volume to the elite players on his offense like the fantasy community wants. I'm not going to be surprised when there are games where 5 or 6 different receivers getting a couple of targets each. And I also do worry just about the fit here between Metcalf and Rodgers. I mean, the elite Aaron Rodgers receivers of the past, none of them were really this archetype of DK Metcalf, and were more so, route technicians, the Devontae Adams of the world. And that's just not what DK Metcalf is. So on paper, the target share should be there. In reality, I'm just not sure how well this is going to mesh. I prefer George Pickens just straight up in fantasy over DK Metcalf. He's getting drafted after him. Jalen Hurts is going after him in a lot of drafts. I would rather take the back part of that elite QB tier, like we mentioned. I don't really love the running backs typically going in this range, but I think by the end of when we look back at draft season, at the end of draft season, like I probably would rather have Amari and Hampton on my team. I might rather have RJ Harvey or Trevion Henderson, some of the high upside rookie running backs going in those middle rounds. See, I'm out on DK Metcalf. I don't want to deal with the headache of Arthur Smith and the potential sort of misfit between Rodgers and Metcalf's play styles. But I could see an argument for him in the seasons where we have seen a big target share for DK Metcalf. He's been a top 20 wide receiver in points per game each of those seasons. Back in 2021 and 2020, where he was around the target share we haven't projected before now. He had 10 plus touchdowns both those years. In his second year of the league was his best season, 17 points per game in that season, was wide receiver 10 that year. So there's definitely a ceiling case here for Metcalf. But yeah, for all those reasons I just said, I'm out.
Yeah, and I did double check that those 11 out of 15 games was 4 or less receptions. So even in games where he saw a lot of target share, there wasn't a lot of completion, and that's exactly what you're talking about, Sam. Where he's not the route tactician, he's a harder guy to get the ball. And but we will move on to who right now, based on what I'm reading on the Steelers websites, is their wide receiver 2 and has the illustrious claim to fame from Sauce Gardner that he was the hardest player to cover in college from Sauce Gardner, and that would be Calvin Austin. Last season, he was 7.2 points per game, wide receiver 81. He's really lined up across the board about there this year. Wide receiver 81, an underdog, which I honestly think he's an underdog type player. I've been drafting a ton of them in my best ball drafts. Sleeper, he's picked 209, wide receiver 76, and WalterPicks, wide receiver 80, pick 196. So essentially, he's free at the end of every single draft if you play in, even 12 to 14 man leagues. I will note that he did have 3 games over 14 points. So he's the type of player almost kind of similar to DK Metcalf, where he can have those explosive weeks, which is why I definitely drafted a ton of him in best ball. I honestly think there is some potential here if he can be on the field all the time and be that wide receiver 2 all the time. They do need someone. Is it going to be Robin Wilson? Is it going to be somebody else? Or are they going to bring somebody in? Not looking super likely right now. So I personally think he's worth a shot at the end of drafts. I've got him on my dynasty team. I think, last pick type candidate is a fine throw of the dart, because if he can get, 6-7 targets a game, that could really be a flex player. If there's any sort of injury where somehow he ends up as the wide receiver 1, he could really be a contributor to your team. So for free at the end of your drafts, and as a Steelers fan, maybe that's why I like him. What do you think, Sam? Would you take him with your last pick?
Yeah, I don't think this is the type of last round pick I'll be targeting. I think a great shout on the best ball stuff, though. He's going undrafted in most best ball leagues, I believe. And we've seen spike weeks last season from him. He reminds me a lot of Trey Tucker and what his situation was last year. A speedy outside receiver, capable of making big plays, but mostly going to be out there running wind sprints. Very, very capable of having 0 targets any given week, even if he's playing a lot. So yeah, I don't want to deal with the receivers beyond DK Metcalf, even more so for a lot of the same reasons I was talking about with DK Metcalf. Are they going to mesh with Aaron Rodgers? How much is the ball going to be spread around all these dusty receivers? I mean, the wide receiver 2 competition here is between Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson, rookie last season, is more of the slot guy. Robert Woods obviously can play, inside and out. Robert Woods going into his age 33 season at this point, but I won't be shocked if we see some weeks where he leads this team in targets. I think this is going to be the type of offense similar to the Packers and what we're talking about with them. There's a bit of a headache week to week, not super consistent in the target share distribution. Calvin Austin did get 4 games down the stretch over an 80% snap share. 3 games down the stretch weeks in the fantasy playoffs, week 15, 16, 17 last year, over 74% of the snaps, 11.5, 10.5, and 7.1 PPR points. Not awful. He had 4 catches at least in each of those games. So I see, a pulse here, definitely best ball viable, but yeah, it's just not going to win leagues there's running backs in the last rounds that literally can win leagues. So yeah, I won't be taking him in any season long drafts.
I'm more on the side with Sam here. When you look at where he's being drafted, you're getting kickers and defenses before you're getting Calvin Austin. But I would rather take the shot on a guy like Jerome Ford, a Trey Benson, even a Darren Waller. I'd rather just like to take the shot on. I don't think Calvin Austin is a terrible player, a terrible wide receiver. I am more of on the Roman Wilson believer side, though. Calvin Austin will start as the wide receiver too. I think Roman Wilson throughout the course of the season will make that case to be behind DK, though.
And right now in the WalterPicks app, we do have Calvin Austin projected as wide receiver 2 with an 11% target share. And then we got 11% target share spread out between Robert Woods and Roman Wilson. And we also gave 1% to Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek, who are also happen to be on this team. But we have Jonnu Smith, who I assume we're going to talk about next, ahead of all these receivers outside of Metcalf and target share. And Freiermuth could easily out-target Calvin Austin too.
Yeah, let's jump to the real wide receiver 2 of this team, probably Jonnu Smith. This was acquired in a trade where we sent Minka Patrick, who I think is one of the best safeties in the league, to get Jalen Ramsey, who we'll see how he does this year. Both those guys have struggled with injury, and acquired Jonnu Smith, someone that Arthur Smith really wanted to grab, someone he formerly coached. So right now, Jonnu Smith, based on last season, 12.7 points per game. He really had a breakout season for him with the Dolphins, especially if you look at a point per game basis. I looked at weeks 5 through 18, which was not the most selective weeks for Jonnu Smith. It's when he really started to take off. If you look at weeks 7 through 18, that would be cherry picking a little bit, where he had 22 points per game week 7. But weeks 5 through 18, he was 1.1 point behind Brock Bowers per game. Just 1.1 point with 15.8 points per game. So absolutely elite last season from week 5 on. He was tight end 6 on the season, even with those first 4 weeks where he was not that good. On Underdog, he's going as tight end 17. I expect that to continue to rise a little bit now that he's it's dropped a lot, but we'll see where that goes with the Steelers. On Sleeper, he's going at tight end 7, and then on WalterPicks, he's going as tight end 15. So a really big jump on Sleeper, most likely to fall back a little bit now that he's no longer with the Dolphins. And then we'll kind of pair him up. We got Pratt Freiermuth, who was 9.1 points per game last season, tight end 16. On Underdog, he's tight end 30. On WalterPicks, he's tight end 30. And on Sleeper, he's tight end 20. But again, that will most likely drop back a little bit as more and more Sleeper drafts are done. Between the two, I'm just not excited about it for fantasy football. I know Jonnu Smith could be that wide receiver 2, tight end 2 for the team. Pat Freiermuth, I still think will demand some targets. He's been good. It's just been the offense and his quarterback play has been so bad. I mean, even last year, still 9.1 points per game with the Steelers. That was better than Jalen Warren. And so I do think that both of these players deserve some targets. Both these players will probably score some touchdowns. Both these players will probably do a whole lot of blocking. So for me, I'm not really drafting either one. It's just not exciting to me. But Avery, is either one of these guys someone that you target in your fantasy football draft?
I'm not targeting, I would say, either. Jonnu Smith, if you have to take him as a top 7, even top 10 tight end, I'm way out of that. I don't think you should be. I mean, Jonnu Smith is a great tight end. Last season, he put up the fantasy points, but this offense is just a completely different offense than the Miami Dolphins. Pat Freiermuth, ever since Jonnu Smith came to this team, he dropped dramatically in ADP. I believe 10 tight end spots. He's being drafted as a tight end 20, 30, depending on what site you're on. It's going to be a split tight end workload. I don't want that. Even if it was a number 1 tight end and the other guy was getting 0% of the snaps, it's still a little bit risky for me.
Yeah, I'm with Avery here. Easy fade for me with Jonnu Smith. Won't be on any of my fantasy teams. Last season was his first season in his NFL career. He's going to age 30 season now. So he broke out, but at 29 years old, first season over 9.5 PPR points per game. I would expect it to be his last season over 9.5 PPR points per game. It was just the perfect storm last year with the situation with the Dolphins, Tua needing it to get it out fast. Every single defense just funneling targets to Jonnu Smith and how they were playing the Dolphins. And now he's on a team that's going to move at a really slow pace. There's another good tight end. I still have all the same concerns for both these tight ends with this whole offense of just every week. I think it's going to be a bit of a different thing. I do think this will be one of the heaviest 2 tight end set teams in the league, which if you guys are seeing my take on this team for him, it's just Caleb Johnson, nobody else for me. And they have Darnell Washington too, like an absolute freak of a tight end. What his measurables are like? Was he 6'7", I think?
I love Darnell Washington. If there's a question that goes around on who is the most your team's team player, it is Darnell Washington. They give him the ball on these little checkdowns, and you can see it on his field. His head comes up and he finds a defender and he goes and punishes that. He's not going for yards. He's going to ruin somebody's day. He's going to get 1 to 2 targets a game because of that as well. So I absolutely love
he's gonna play. He's definitely gonna play too and rotate in. Really good blocker. He's 6'7", 264 pounds, 96th percentile size adjusted speed, and despite a lot of his plays being dump offs, he actually has a pretty high yards per reception. He was at over 10 last season.
Nobody wants to tackle him.
I definitely remember cashing at least one Darnell Washington prop last season. There was like over half a catch. Probably was the line. But that makes it even just a little bit more nervous for this tight end room overall. I'm fading this whole team outside of Caleb Johnson.
And I'm honestly surprised you guys are fading these guys after also fading Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. So it's no surprise, obviously, that this is a much worse situation than what we talked about in Baltimore. And we still had both Sam and Avery not in on Mark Andrews. So there's no way anyone, even at the discounted price that we're talking Steelers. So not the most exciting for fantasy football these days. It used to be. It used back in the day, the 3 Bs. But here we are today. I guess for draft or pass, is there anybody on this Steelers team that you will draft outside of Caleb Johnson? And for me it is a no.
Yeah, for me, it's a no as well. It's Caleb Johnson or pass.
Yeah, if DK looks at me the right way, maybe, but outside of that, no.
Yeah, I will just say from the top 2 in Superflex leagues, I do think there's a little bit of value in Rodgers. He doesn't have the same spread the ball around concerns, obviously, as all the pass catchers in Superflex, deep into Superflex drafts. So the part of the reason he's just going so late in that format, but otherwise, yeah.
Well, that is our Steelers wrap up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode where we're talking the Browns.